scary because it drives you to do things that are not so good. But it was an interesting theory. And I think there may be some truth to that, certainly for the ultra-Orthodox and those on the far right. So
and just to help out a little bit, those bombs you're talking about, the seed is the fact that America has admitted that Iran has acquired some American missiles to mimic, to build their own version of some of our missiles. And so they are going to get stronger because they've got some technology. And secondly, you're talking about U.S. non-involvement. Some of the bombs that I'm hearing that were so precise in Lebanon were American most recent abilities to target deep bunkers. So the U.S. quietly behind the scenes is doing stuff, even though they're not publicly admitting it.
Well, I mean, and there are other ways that we see arguably American involvement. Prime Minister Netanyahu addressed the UN General Assembly last week on Friday, despite the fact that there is an outstanding arrest warrant by the International Criminal Courts, which the United States then did not enforce. And secondly, thanks now to evidence presented by the Israeli government, a photo of Netanyahu in his hotel room in New York, giving the green light for the attack that took out Nasrallah. And then more recently, the statement from the Israeli Foreign Ministry declaring UN Secretary General Guterres persona non grata and not welcome in the state of Israel. What is this then saying about our system of the international rule of law and how viable it is moving forward?
You know, it's more political than actual. You know, the rule of law is seems to be something of convenience, as opposed to something that all nations and all people follow and adhere to. The disrespect for life is awful, and we're seeing that certainly in the Middle East, in other areas of the world. It's, you know, there's no redemption there.
Well, when it comes then to the idea of, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Nance, you want to go first, and then I'll.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is kind of a note from our sponsor. Because Alan's gone, I am driving the show today, which is, you know, and I forgot to hit a key button, and so we just went on about 2.5 minutes ago. So I really apologize, you guys. We've been talking about the Israeli situation, and so we'll try to keep the spicier stuff and all the swearing for later in the show to really entertain you. So I apologize. It's all my fault.
You mean nobody heard that Joel has converted to Islam because he wants to avoid Rosh Hashanah and the high holidays?
I think Ramadan would be good for me. Diet wise, discipline wise.
Nancy, I enjoyed the burqa you were wearing when we came on the show.
He converted for the jokes, as they say.
Yeah. Or
anti-dentite.
Or the dinner. What happened to the dinner?
Yeah, he wants the iftar, right?
Well,
but we still have time for
I want to go back to the rule of law, if I could, for a second.
Sure.
While I'm always concerned about international law because it's so dependent upon nations following it, I'm more concerned about our country, in which, you know, we talk about the rule of law being sacrosanct. And we're ignoring the international law when it's not convenient for us. We enforce it when it is, and we ignore it when it isn't. That is a problem. That should not continue to go on.
Well, Bill, I mean, it seems as though that distinction is also happening here at home when it comes to whether the idea of the rule of domestic law having any value. Candidate Donald Trump.
I was hoping we'd segue that way. Thank you.
You know, it's that whole simpatico thing. As Beverly said, it must be from thinking of you back in the '60s with that iconic photo, Bill.
Yes.
Thank God Alan's not here too.
Thank you.
Make my Friday good.
I have the power to put that one up.
Oh no,
Come on, Nancy,
but I won't.
let's do it. Let's do it.
Well, former President Donald Trump has vowed that if he were to be reelected, that he will prosecute Google over quote unquote bad stories about him. This also on top of the pledge that he's planning on prosecuting all of those cheaters, in his estimation, which after retweeting a particular montage had people in orange jumpsuits, including former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, including President Joe Biden, including Vice President Kamala Harris, and also Minnesota Governor and Vice Presidential candidate Tim Walz. At a certain point, is this really just rhetoric and bluster that can be ignored, or is it something perhaps more disturbing? Nancy.
Grandpa's brains have turned to mush. I mean, he is saying, if you are as I am, extremely online, you are seeing these, mouth farts out of him like twice a day now. I mean, wherever he is, he says something ridiculous and outrageous, and it's having an effect in the sense that it's, what was Steve Bannon's deathless phrase, flood the zone with shit. That's what he's doing. He's saying ridiculous stuff. We're going to tariff our way into vast prosperity. Nobody's going to feel any of this. I'm going to lock up Nancy Pelosi. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And legit news organizations are no longer really reporting this stuff. I mean, there's a few internet people that just kind of keep up with this. I don't know how they keep their sanity, that post clips on social media, but that's about the only place you're really seeing it. And, as our commenter here says, it's a right-wing race to the bottom, but that what that does is it has an effect of essentially making it not happen. I mean, if most people don't have the time that I do to be watching the news or this kind of stuff all day long. And they don't know that's going on. So there you go.
Well, Nancy, that's the demographic, that white male group that's enjoying what he's saying and jump on all over that. That's making them the motivated vote. This is
that probably
the
is.
guy that you would think about who you wanted to date if you were single. Okay, he's the guy that Trump's trying to get to because of the fact they're listening to them. Okay, because when you talk to people, I talk to my daughters, and because they do where they work, and everybody's like, it's that white male. They're coming in. Vance is going to be here once a week. Trump's going to be here once a week, but they're all going to those white male areas of the state, and that's what they're going to be talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And Vance in particular is another one who's as bad as he is. Sorry, go ahead, Barb.
They're trotting him out. They're trotting Vance out every other day as if he were a normal person and not a bot.
Yeah.
And the way that he smirks into the camera, that was the thing in the debate that freaked me out the most, is that he'd say these things and then he'd go,
yeah.
Right. and when he actually said the words, I thought you guys weren't going to fact check.
Yeah.
Well,
what's
that
funny,
means you're right.
But Barbara, what you changed into, because in fact, if you look at that male group, Vance's numbers went up amongst that men group. Okay, Waltz went up too, but the largest jump for support was amongst those white males that we've been talking about. They saw improvement in Vance's numbers.
They love that stuff. Yeah,
and that's why they picked. But that's exactly why they picked Tim Walz, was to get to those people, is to be more like them. But apparently the problem is that Walz should have been more ruthless, but he's a nice man that talks directly to people. Right. And I think they might have miscalculated. That's not what they want to hear. They want to hear horrible things. It's
and that's what's unfortunate. Yeah. And that's what's unfortunate. I understand, what Ed is saying with that demographics. I'm like, at this point, I think everyone is done. Basically, I mean, everyone's out there on both sides every day. I know that we're out there hitting the pavement, especially in Wayne County, and we're making sure that, the base and the ones who are supporting Kamala and the ones that's undecided, even though I don't believe you have any more people undecided. I think they like that column. I think people have their minds made up, but we're going to go ahead and play this, that people are still out there undecided at this point on which candidate. But it's going to come down to, this is crazy October. I think everyone who does this, and Ed would agree, right before a major election like this, and this is a firepower one, this is going to be crazy October. Do you think it's crazy so far? Wait for the next couple of weeks. But again, I just tell people, hey, just stay focused. And then just, this rhetoric that's out here, at this point, you know what you want. And this election is going to tell us a lot about America.
And we don't want to know it.
Exactly.
I have been talking to people who genuinely believe that what's the number? 315,000 criminals were released into the United States from southern borders. And they're doing all the crimes, and they're doing all the raping, and they're bringing the TB, and you can tell them the truth, that which is, that the actual truth is that sort of is a correct number, and it's sort of not a correct number, and it's people that have been here since Obama was president, and this weird status, and they just look at you and they go, 315,000 criminals have been released in the United States, and because of that, they're going to vote for Donald Trump. Doesn't matter that a lot of them came in when Donald Trump was president, because he talks like they think.
Well, Barb, I mean, on that, and expanding it to the aftermath of the debate, one of the points that was made by Vance was that, I mean, this was just out there without much opportunity to really refute it, that apparently undocumented migrants are responsible for the skyrocketing housing prices and the shortage in housing. So, I mean, part of this, as you said, is really about media responsibility of pushing back, the dreaded fact checking, which seems to be a heresy for Vance. Is there any way out of this? I mean, will it stick for anybody?
I wish I knew the answer to that. It is amazing to me, out of all the lies that were spewed that night, the housing issue and the fact that Trump saved Obamacare, saved the Affordable Care Act, were simply amazing to me. And to be honest with you, if there was one thing that I would advocate, it's that we not have these debates where there's no fact checking anymore.
Right.
They ought to fact check everybody. If you really object to fact checking, you're probably a liar.
Right.
So,
well, I mean, I was speaking to a journalist for a fairly large newspaper, not local, and she was describing to me that the whole idea about fact checking among editorial boards is not something for which the boards have a whole lot of appetite, because they get inundated with criticisms and hate mail from the right. And so in many ways, they feel as though, I mean, they're cowed into backing off. I mean, so somebody who said that this is unfortunately the creeping culture in some very prominent boards.
Well,
around,
and keep also in mind that when people talk about fact checking, we need to do fact checking. It's like they act as though there's this army of people out there known as fact checkers, when in fact what they have is one editor, maybe, who's working from home, who's doing the work of 5, that used to be 5 editors, and now it's down to 1. And now this person is supposed to go through every single letter to the editor and every single op-ed that's submitted, and check the things that they even know to check. I mean, this is silly. I mean, they don't, the local media, the news, the so-called mainstream media has been so decimated by, cutbacks and buyouts and everything else, that fact checking is just a myth. I mean, editing is practically a myth. I can't believe the grammatical errors and the usage errors that I see in there. And that's the kind of thing that ought to be automatic for most editors. I mean, that
it must hurt you physically, Nancy.
It does hurt me physically. You see my I am silently judging your grammar sign up there. I mean,
Nancy, my pet peeve is outside of.
Outside of, yeah.
Nancy, I get it. I have to. You're right on the spot, because I'm doing media buys for candidates, because I do a lot of that work. Right now, nearly 70% of Michiganders and nationally watch Fox News sometime during the day.
70%.
Up to 70%. So the bottom line is why is everybody else doing this? Because they're trying to compete with Fox. Okay, they're trying to stay alive. But when I'm buying time, people says, who do we? 75% is Fox. I can't get a demographic that I can say this is all MSNBC or ABC. It's basically all Fox now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that because they watch it for cardio?
Oh yeah. Remember, they don't have. They're not
Enraged every 3 seconds.
Sugarcoating.
I received this mailer, this very large mailer yesterday, I guess because I'm a registered Democrat these days, against Mike Rogers, and of course it's the standard attack point on Mike Rogers, which is that he's actually a Florida resident, not a Michigander. Sure. But my favorite is he said Rogers after he left his Washington, he lined his pockets and moved to Florida, where he bought a nearly $2 million mansion and 2 yachts. Okay. Speaking of using language correctly, we're going to have a talk with the Michigan Democratic Party, because they apparently have just a generic real estate photo here, which is supposed to be the $2 million mansion. And this picture are the 2 yachts. Okay? And to me, it's like we need. I know the Democratic Party has a blue collar base, but we need to understand what a yacht is. And these 2 things are not yachts. I think these are boats. So I think it's so.
Isn't that a sloop, John B?
Yeah. It's not a sloop. I can tell you that much.
Nancy, they forgot there wasn't yachts. It's yada yada.
Yada yada.
Hey Ed, I mean, given the expansion of the war into Lebanon now, and given the fact that we do have a sizable Lebanese American community locally, are you seeing anything in the polls that's shifting things? I mean, I had pretty much assumed that the Lebanese American community was already voting how it was, which didn't necessarily favor Kamala Harris. But are we seeing a further shift away from that now?
Well, we're seeing some movement back to the party. But here's what I'm saying. This was going to be my schmuck of the week, anyways. Okay. Right now, when I'm in Wayne County, all I'm hearing the fact is I'm not voting for Trump, but they won't say Kamala Harris. Okay. And matter of fact, going to do some of the door-to-door stuff in Wayne County, talk to people on the street. Please vote for me, but it's okay if you vote for Trump. The problem is Wayne County is getting a mixed message in some of those competitive districts. Vote for me, but I don't care if you vote for Trump. So that's what I'm hearing right now.
I mean, this is
right.
This
the
is
numbers are coming back. Right, the uncommitted, but they're not committing after they're uncommitted.
Yeah, that's because I think the uncommitted quote unquote endorsement was, we're not endorsing anybody, but we're not going to vote for Trump, and then you basically vote for who you want. So it's sort of like a backhanded kind of endorsement. Nancy, why don't we go to an extended commercial break since we had the tech issue.
I screwed up the first one. Okay.
That is noble.
Nancy, I gotta hand it to you. You are true blue. I was trying to use the passive voice, but as a true journo, you pushed back and insisted on using the active voice, and you, in fact, incriminated yourself.
If anyone has to pee, you have 2 minutes. So let's get going.
This is Alyssa Slotkin, Democrat running for the U.S. Senate. I want to share a story about who, more than anyone, taught me the importance of listening and accountability. It was President Barack Obama. I served in the White House on his national security staff. I got to see him in action, up close, and behind closed doors in the Oval Office. First, he was brilliant, and therefore demanded people really knew their stuff. It was President Obama who grilled me on issues and demanded accountability on what we said and did. That commitment to accountability is exactly the approach I use today, listening to our communities. It's why I've written an opportunity agenda with detailed plans to strengthen Black businesses, increase Black wealth, and provide real opportunities for our youth. Because, as President Obama taught me, you better say what you mean and mean what you say. So that's why I approve this message.
Neighborhood beautification, that's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition, and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you, Nancy, for what you did in the active voice. Well, we are now in the midst of October with the election coming up next month. But of course, there's always this idea of an October surprise. Some would say maybe it was the escalation of conflict in the Middle East. But another possible interpretation of that phrase is the fact that Special Counsel Jack Smith has released papers describing in some detail former President Donald Trump's efforts to subvert the 2020 election. I'm sure, and I'm looking at you, Bill, because I know that you are quite assiduous at this, reading the various reports. And
I confess I'm only halfway through it, but it reads so well. I mean, it is so much fun to read. I just haven't had enough time. I noticed that I think somebody covered this on the news last night. You know, one of the things that's in there is Giuliani sent a message to the head of the Republican legislature in Michigan saying, we need a
riot,
something passed in the legislature to indicate that they are studying the issue of whether or not this was a legitimate election, which would have created all kinds of havoc. It went to the wrong number. He sent it to the wrong number.
Are we now? I mean, can we openly talk about the fact that Rudy Giuliani is kind of a pathetic alcoholic? I mean, I don't want to.
Well, his daughter's certainly talking about it.
Yeah, his own family has been talking about it for a while, and it's just, you know, it's.
Well, but the reason that that's so relevant, in my opinion, isn't that it was Giuliani who is crazed, but the fact that somebody told him to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you cannot read this document and not believe that this was a coordinated effort.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought it wasn't Jack Smith. I doubt it was Jack Smith who actually wrote it, but it was very well written, and it lays out what is clearly a coordinated plan to wreak havoc in as many states as possible.
Yes,
and you know, and I think that I know that this has been out in the press generally. The multiple people who have testified that when Trump was told that Pence's life was in danger, his response was, "So what?"
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
That was really chilling about the VP and Pence and his fear to go along with the people that's supposed to protect him, his security, and had his gut instinct. Can you imagine? This is the vice president, you know, of the United States having that fear from the person who selected him.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's also a lot of great evidence in here that Trump leaned on Pence really hard the week before.
Mm-hmm.
And that Pence was not confrontational with him, but clearly didn't do his bidding. And
exactly.
Well, and you also see Vance leaning into this by not admitting and acknowledging that Biden won the election. So it seems as though they've resurrected.
But he's just looking to the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
It also needs to be said yet again, and I don't even know why I'm wasting my breath, because I'm sure none of these MAGA idiots are actually watching this show. But what happened in the TCF Center that night was, I mean, it was borderline criminal. And this, you know, there are so many counting boards, or there were at the time. I think they've revised the procedure. And before the election, well before the election, they knew that it was going to be a crowded room, and COVID was in full flower at that time, phase COVID 1.0, original recipe. And so they said they were going to have, they were going to limit the challengers to one Democrat, one Republican, and one nonpartisan per counting board, which still there's something like 200 or something, and that still made for 600 people in the room. And as the night went on, and they were letting extra people in. This wasn't a hard limit. They were letting extra people in. As the night went on and the lead began to whittle away, the Michigan Conservative Coalition essentially like blew the horn and said, everybody get down to the TCF Center and fuck some shit up.
Right.
That's exactly what they did. And at some point the guard said, this room is overcrowded. No more people can come in. If you go out, you're not coming back in. And then they started banging on the windows, and that's when they put up the covers of the windows, because these people are taking pictures of the poll workers in there who are just trying to do their job.
Right.
And so they said, you don't. So this idea that they were shut out, that there weren't enough Republicans in there, there were hundreds of Republicans in that room. Who were watching all of this, who could tell the world that nothing untoward happened, but instead we ended up with Melissa Carone and Michon Maddock and all these other people out there, and it just infuriates me that this lie continues to just serve this, the MAGA base, and they won't shut up about it.
And it's a completely racist lie as well. There's a reason
that's the
they
other
chose Detroit. There's a reason they chose Detroit, because Detroit means something to white guys in West Michigan.
Right.
You have to say exactly what it is, and that's why they went there. They weren't bothering us in Pontiac.
And that's the other thing. Trump didn't lose Michigan in the TCF Center. Trump lost Michigan in Oakland County. All those nice moms in Ferndale and Farmington and all those.
Absolutely.
Bloomfield. Yeah, they're the ones who didn't do that. So
and right now they can't find Republicans to work the counting boards. I'm signed up. My husband's signed up, and we're getting this stuff, and it's like we really want a balanced group in there, and they cannot get Republicans in there to do this.
Right.
And that's the only thing. And I don't scare. I scare very easily, but it doesn't stop me. Let's put it that way. I just keep going like a giant dope. But that's what really worries me is that when they figure that out, and if they figure that out.
Right. I was
You got to remember already, Pete Hoekstra's already said Michigan has already ruined the races. The immigrants have already here. They've already voted. The votes are bad. We don't have to do any more county Michigan because we already know it's stolen.
There's a man who should feel shame that doesn't.
You bastard.
Go ahead, Saeed.
No. I was just showing Ed, confirming that I voted twice.
You're the one.
Right. I agree with Barb, because I know I will be at the Huntington place, just committed several days there. And you're right, Nancy, but I can tell you just, being involved and listening to some of all the plans, because they remember what happened in TCF, now Huntington Place in 2020. I urge the Republicans not to try that again, because it's not going to work in Huntington Place this time.
No.
I was in Costco yesterday, and I heard the one of the sample matrons, and she was speaking to somebody else, and she says, "You know what? It's going to be a fixed election again. It's going to be rigged. I mean, this is what happened in 2020." She says, "I went to bed at night and Trump was ahead, and I woke up in the morning and he wasn't, and that just proves it." And
did you take her little bits of pizza bites or whatever and just upset the whole tray? You should have done that. So.
Actually, that's what happened with Hillary
Clinton.
Clinton.
On the first part, no on
the
other.
Exactly. I was going to say that too, Bill.
Yeah. The chicken, the butter chicken non-empanada was just too compelling for me to make waves. So
the moral of the story is nobody go to sleep. Just stay up.
Yeah.
Stay woke.
Well, I'm working as a challenge. I'm going to be a Democratic challenger at the TCF or at the Huntington Place this time. So if you're there, Beverly, see you there. If anybody else is within the sound of my voice is there, say hi. But it's going to be
So part of how divided this country has to do with the fact that people won't even acknowledge the good on the other side. Hurricane Helene came through and really devastated several states. Florida, of course, was the point of impact. When President Biden was flying over Helene for the damage, because he didn't want to be on the ground and disrupt because of Secret Service protection and everything else, what was happening, Governor Ron DeSantis skipped accompanying the president. But you also have perhaps even further and more long-term devastation in Western North Carolina. Asheville is practically cut off. Interstate 40 between Knoxville and Asheville is closed until next September. Wow. And another nearby highway is closed till March. No cell service or very limited cell service, no power. I mean, this is awful. Ed, how do you think that that's going to be something that that people are going to care about as far as who to blame, who to credit?
I already know who's going to blame. Here's Trump's message: this is a Democratic instigated thing because now my Republicans from the mountains are not going to be able to vote.
Oh, yeah, that's certainly what it is. For sure.
Actually, he actually went further.
They found us out.
He went further than that last night.
That the Democrats are controlling the weather.
Yes,
right.
She sent a text.
Yes,
one of those crazy lasers. God only knows. I mean, that they're intentionally doing this to Republicans. I mean, the insanity of that is one thing, but you know, the absurdity of it, I can't grasp. And the fact
but Joel, you got to remember the fact that Chinese admitted doing it in their own country. Now, why some of the floods are happening because they're trying to make this fake rain. So some of the flooding they have in China. So there's factual that it can be done. So
I'm sure it can be done.
In America, it's the Democrats doing it,
right? Who are creating the hurricane? But again, it's the demonization of the other. It kind of, this whole thing with immigration is just so disturbing. To demonize immigrants is just so base and awful. Without the recognition that we're all immigrants.
But these same people don't believe that there was an insurrection January 6th. You can't.
Correct. It's amazing how the narrative or the script of America is completely flipped, and how really Trump and Fox News have achieved that. It is a phenomenon.
We can no longer say
none of us here ever fucking happened.
They broke the bar. There's no more bar. There's no more.
There's no bottom. Bottom is that.
Trump actually went further late last night. I was listening, and I think he was in Michigan when he said the reason that FEMA's not in there helping is because they stole the money from FEMA and gave it to those immigrants that were brought in, hoping that the immigrants would vote for him. That's what he said last night.
That's why most immigrants are doing so well.
Was that before or after the MAGA people were fighting each other? Was that before?
Do you know why immigrants are doing well? It's because we all carry umbrellas. So we prepared. Well, Ed, actually, cloud seeding is something that is being done in places like the UAE and Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
In order to offset climate change. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, China's the one that overdid it, which is really funny. I was reading a story about China where they actually are creating some floods in the country.
Yeah. I do want to point out too that JD Vance called climate change the weird science.
Don't trust those experts.
No, that's from a guy who wears Maybelline eye makeup.
No, actually, Barb, I think he was trying to appeal to the Gen X crowd because they remember that movie fondly.
It was a great movie.
Speaking.
This
go ahead.
Chronic commenter here. You don't like my music. He comments on everything, and I've been posting most of what he comments on during the show. But he has hit on something very important with this one. I was talking to somebody the other day about how would if Trump is somehow, if he's reelected, and is somehow able to at least start to make good on his promise to evict.
Mass deportations.
Mass deportations. I'm sorry, the phrase was eluding me. What would happen? What would happen? And I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, most of the restaurants that are functional in this country would probably have to close because they depend heavily on recent immigrants, mainly people from Latin America, but also Bengalis, you know, quite a few people from overseas. That would, and it's because, and I asked a friend of mine a woman I work out with whose husband is a chef at a couple of major restaurants. And I said, why do so many Bengalis end up in the restaurant business? And she just said, because they work harder than anybody you can ever imagine. So that would be the first thing, restaurants. We're talking about housing. We have a housing crisis. What's it going to be like if we get rid of like all, or, you know, half of the construction workers in this country who, again, are predominantly Latino? I mean, we're not going to be able to build anything. Yesterday, I was riding my bike back from somewhere and I passed a landscaping crew, everybody speaking Spanish to each other. And I thought, well, I hope everybody in Bloomfield Hills and Grosse Pointe is good with mowing their own goddamn lawns, because that's going to be gone too. I mean, there are tons of key essential businesses that are that rely on immigrants to do this, and not all of them are 100% legal. Okay, I mean,
including Major League Baseball, but we'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
You know where it's going to hurt? It's going to hurt Western Michigan, where they have all that farmland,
yes.
and
I mean,
the cherries and the apples,
Mm-hmm.
and all those white men that are all up in arms. Guess what? You're going to be picking apples forever.
Yeah, or they're going to be rotten on the ground is more likely.
Well, for the woke crowd, how am I going to get my avocados and my artichokes and all those other things I like to eat?
Exactly. What about Nancy's avocado toast, which she relies on for breakfast all winter long?
God.
Okay.
Oh my God, Nancy going first and third person in the same sentence.
Bizarro world.
It looks like the Sino-xenophobia has hit another level, and I'm afraid it's going to get even worse. 5 University of Michigan graduate students from China have been charged in a federal counter-surveillance probe at the Camp Grayling military facility. The complaint was filed against Jikai Zhu, Renshang Guan, Haoming Zhu, Jingzhe Tao, and Yi Liang. There you go. I'm working on my visa application for Beijing. So
he's showing off his deep knowledge of that BBC Guide to Pronouncing Names.
There you go. So, which, by the way, these guys' names weren't in there because that's 20 years old. But you know,
as a smart, all we can do is just shake our head and say it's not so.
How did they get into Camp Grayling in the first place? Did they walk through the woods? I mean, that's.
Well, here's the charges against them. The charges are conspiracy, making false statements to investigators, and destroying records during the federal investigation.
Okay.
We've got 2 lawyers in the House. I mean, are these? I mean, the nature of these charges seems a little bit specious to me.
I don't know what did they trespass? I mean, what are they?
Well, they were apparently caught deep within Camp Grayling taking photographs of military equipment. Okay, and it was some kind of maneuvers that they were doing with Taiwanese soldiers, and
you know. After 9/11, there were so many cases of Arab and Muslim individuals who were getting detained for taking pictures of the Empire State Building, the Washington Monument, under the allegation that are you finding more potential sites? In England, I remember one time I took a picture of MI6's headquarters because it was in a James Bond movie, and then I was like, oh boy.
Uh-oh.
I guess they'll never cast me in the movie. But that kind of paranoia, I mean, it seems like it's the only thing bipartisan now is ganging up on China.
Well,
how did they get in there though? I mean, that's really interesting.
Well, I know. I mean,
I'm curious.
My husband is a fly fisherman, and so he's up in that area a lot. And we vacationed up there, and you hear the planes going over, and sometimes they do bombs. That's why the Kirtland's warbler, returned from extinction. It was because they nest in a particular type of pine tree that tends to grow after a fire. So they found them in where the bombs had gone off. And I love Camp Grayling. I love how whenever you go to the grocery store in Grayling, there's always people there in camo fatigues. And plus, let's not forget that in the 90s, I believe it was some Michigan militia guys who were supposedly going to try to break in and take over.
Those guys were cool.
And you got to remember, Barbara, when you go up to Camp Grayling, if they're on maneuvers, they're going to be out of the most secret part, moving around. You know, it's not, if you read some of the, so they'll be able to get pictures because you can't do maneuvers just in a small little area where everything's off guard.
I understand. We have friends that live right. You have to take the road next to Camp Grayling to get to their place on the Manistee River. So Bob was up there and he accidentally took like a wrong turn. He's sitting there. He made it okay. But I mean, and by the way, and you drive by a fake Middle Eastern village where there's a little tiny mosque. You can see it.
God, really?
Oh yeah. Oh no, that's.
By the way, Barb, I tell Bob I'm glad that he's safe, and I know a little bit about taking the wrong turns, like when I ended up at Grosse Pointe. So
the hell are you doing?
So before we go to the last segment, I do want to go ahead and recognize our great Detroit Tigers, who back in August had a 0.2% chance of making it to the playoffs. They swept the Houston Astros, and this is my favorite statistic. The pitcher for game 2 was Josh Hader, who has a salary this year of $19 million. The entire payroll for the Detroit Tigers this year, $18.8 million.
Wow.
So when you saw that picture of Houston pitcher Justin Verlander looking gazingly at the Tiger dugout, he wasn't thinking about his wife. He wanted back in the Tigers.
So they're having so much fun. It's just like watching the Lions. You can tell the guys love each other. They're having a great time.
Right.
It's just, this is the joy of sport. Is this? There's
the other thing I like about
different backgrounds, different races, immigrants, non-immigrants, and they're all a collective working
avocados,
together, winning and bringing joy.
Honey Crisp apples. Let's go.
This is the first example we should be following.
What I really like the fact that we've adopted now that because one reason we're winning, there was a big and deep analysis. Tigers are no longer depending on the first pitcher, okay, the lead pitcher. They're only working 3, maximum 4 innings. We only have one great starting pitcher, and that's a commitment now. A lot of teams are, because once we eliminated all our first stringers, we started doing this new routine because they're just saying the fact we no longer can the other team get used to what our pitchers are going to be because we change them so often.
Right.
Right.
AJ Hinch has done a phenomenal job, man.
Yeah.
Tarek Skubal, who won the pitching triple crown, so
win the Cy Young.
And he's going to win the Cy Young, I am sure. Nancy, why don't we go to the final segment?
Okay.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Smart of the Week.
There is again no paucity, no dearth, no lack of.
Oh, and before we get just very quickly, somebody asked a little while back, "Where's Al?" Because of my screw up and cutting off the beginning of the show, Al and Alan and Steve Fishman are ringing in the new year. They're being the good Jewish boys, as opposed to say Joel Sklar, who is
as opposed to the rest of us.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, I hope I make the Book of Life this year. I don't know. Never.
Well, if you were a Simple Minds fan, you could get into the Book of Brilliant Things, but that's a whole different thing. Okay, okay, I see where we are. Everyone just became smaller there. Ed, your schmuck.
Well, I have 2 schmucks on an international basis. And I see, and I hope I'm not going to make you mad. Is President Erdogan of Turkey?
Perfect, absolutely perfect. Honorary Turk has been conferred upon you.
Yeah, because the point being the fact he's gathering other countries to take on Israel, to attack them. At the same token, he told Putin, "I don't want any more of your military equipment because I want to start buying F-35s from the U.S. again."
And not only that, Ed, but I mean he's still supplying oil and natural gas to Israel.
Correct.
So
Yep.
Those
and in the U.S., I've already said the fact is the Michiganders that are telling people who are running for office, vote for me, but it's okay if you vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Ed, I think the only critique I have is that you've shown your American bias because only you, for whatever reason, see those as inconsistencies. When the world is much bigger than that.
Oh, I know. But I've helped people teach you how to do that in my life. So I'm basically doing my penance.
No. Wait a whole week. The Day of Atonement is next week. Next
Okay.
week. Okay, Beverly.
Okay, there were several this week, but I only have one, and mine's going to go to the former First Lady Melania Trump, who just made her 10 toes down declaration that she's going to stand up for abortion and reproductive rights. Really? Okay, you were the First Lady at the time. It would have been great, not with a memoir or a book, when your husband and his administration was working hard to, overturn Roe v. Wade. That probably would have been a great time to stand up and make that declaration. So I'm going to say she's my schmuck of the week because, you couldn't think of it a few years ago. So she's my schmuck of the week for her declaration. She's standing up for abortion.
Dan Savage tweeted something that should have occurred to me when I read that, which is that for some time now, Republican anti-choice presidents have used their wives to make these statements, and then soften the ground a little bit, bring in a few wobblers on the women on the fence. Well, yeah, he said all that stuff, but his wife said this, and so we'll give him a break.
And I think most people saw it that way. This was October antics. Yeah.
Did you see the video in which she announced this?
Was her voice half, or was her face half in shadow, and was it black and white?
It comes out of the shadow.
In my country, I believe that the woman has to have the right of the
fundamental right
of her body.
Yeah,
I think
very scary.
And I'm a very beautiful bodied woman, so I can go run around nude too.
Yeah.
Well, I
got news for you about her body, Ed. You're not going to like it. Go ahead.
I heard the October surprise is actually that she's still alive.
Yeah.
And they wheeled her out.
Golf courses, Melania.
I heard that she was asking for $250,000 to appear on CNN for an interview about her book.
She was.
And she received $250,000 from not from CNN, but from a Republican organization that she spoke at.
No, she spoke at the Log Cabin Republicans fundraiser, and they paid her. I think the Trump campaign actually paid her about $250,000.
Yeah, that's not unusual.
And I would only point out that as a sex worker, she is accustomed to being paid for her time. So that's, I think, completely.
Good point,
Nancy, that's not true. We all know that. We all know that keynote speeches are the world's oldest profession. So.
And hey, sex work is work. No judgment, Melania. No judgment.
So you guys
you better rein us
got to pay the rent.
We're going to keep going.
So SNL is going to be great this weekend. SNL will.
Are you kidding? 2 weeks ago, I was assigning all of you porn movie names because that's where we were going.
So remember the high school stuff, the reason she can't get laid off. Just kidding.
Well, actually, Nancy, if you enjoy what you do, it's not really work.
Well, I was going to say anybody who has to get in bed with Donald Trump is not enjoying what they're doing. So go ahead.
Thank you.
Well,
thank you.
So speaking of thinking of England, Barb.
Oh, all right. I have two. I have former Colorado County Clerk Tina Peters. Sentenced to 9 years for trying to steal the election, and I think that Nishan Natick better be looking.
Did you listen to the judge's sentencing?
The judge just ripped her a big.
Yeah. Oh my God! I was telling Saeed, I felt like I needed a cigarette after that. It was so good.
So satisfying. That was great. My other one, real fast though, is Carlos Tavares, who is the CEO of Stellantis. And he's so stupid. He's how did this guy get where he is? He's so inept. He's so bad. He's trying to fix his arrogant profile. And it's like, you're bringing this, he's going to bring that company down. And Sean Fain is going to strike that company with a big, giant grin on his face. And you can argue whether it's a good idea this time of year to do that, but I think that he is proving, as did the dock workers, God bless them, that don't fuck with workers.
Yeah.
Stop fucking with workers. This is just do you want immigrant labor making your cars and unloading your boats? It's not going to work. So solidarity forever, and I hope Tina enjoys prison as much as she can.
9 years.
Yeah,
9 years. He made consecutive sentences, man.
Yeah, he was not fucking around, and it's unpardonable. I mean, at first I thought this was in the federal system, but it's local, which means that even if Trump is reelected, she's not going to be pardoned. She can't be pardoned.
Yeah, and sometimes like you'll hear a judge say awful things, and then they'll be nice at the end. He did also things, but none of that was common. It was from the get-go to the end, like, you're an awful human being. You're a disgrace to the nation. You're going away for as long as I can put you.
There was footage today of her being arrested when she was arrested, and it was the most Karen moment I have ever seen in my life.
Right. She kept saying, "Let go of me.
Who the hell are you hurting me?
You're hurting me. I'm gonna have a bruise. Boy, oh boy, you know."
Yeah, I'm gonna have a bruise, and I'm gonna let everyone know that you gave me a bruise.
I like
awesome.
I like the irony that as she's going to be going into jail, the Menendez brothers might be coming out. So there you go.
There you go.
What
Joel.
a world.
Okay, I got Marjorie Taylor Greene just for this morning's tweet, the constant idiocy and the joy and exuberance in which she spreads it out there. My other one, and this is from watching Monday Night Football, a lot of ticky-tack interference calls. The refs got to let the boys play. You know, it's a handsy game. It's a violent game. The interference calls late in the game on Arnold and Carlton Davis, that's absurd, man. You got to let the boys play. So the refs who are throwing laundry, keep it in your pocket.
Throwing laundry.
Throwing laundry. I don't want to say
Who gave
After
Joe
those
what
calls,
before this show?
Ticky tacky. You know, yet another
Ticky-tacky,
example of immigrant idioms infiltrating our sports.
But Joel, I agree with Joel because that spread it a little bit. They did a little bit of that in the WNBA this season too. A little bit too much. Let them play.
My computer's lost it. There we go. Sorry.
Do you think that they were dialing down because Caitlin Clark was getting beat up pretty well out there?
That's a pretty intense story,
well, perhaps, but I think that we definitely need to applaud her because after everything she withstood, you know, she played a hell of and had a great first season.
Rookie of the year, you know,
yeah, a hell of a season. First time out,
brought people to the game.
More people to the game. She brought more people to the game than anybody.
I thought it was a season. I thought it was a season of hazing. It reminded me of Robbie Benson in the movie One on One.
Love that movie.
Yes.
Love that movie.
But one thing, I'm not. You know, I like all.
God, it was a high school movie.
I'm glad the whole league is getting.
It was Robbie Benson.
But she definitely showed her sin.
Somebody gave Joel a gummy before the show.
Well, I'm happy to have one after the show, and I'm not.
We could.
I'll do one before the show one time.
The THC content does matter. I don't care.
Nancy, it's time for Bill's picture on this one.
Wow, that is an archetype, Beth. Okay, well, speaking of Bill,
you're next.
I don't know if I can do this. I guess I'm going to pay a little homage to Barb. I'm surprised she didn't do this one, but the management staff at Impact Plastic in Tennessee, who threatened to fire anybody who left early as the storm came in, only cost 5 people their lives.
Oh my!
And a couple people are still missing. They're number one. And Kenny King, the judge who just keeps on giving, is my number 2. It just came out that that they eliminated all the chat function on the district court, in 36 district court, because they determined that he was communicating with a bunch of followers and talking about the case and not paying attention to the case and giving and disclosing confidential information. I'm going to be real surprised if this guy stays on the bench much longer. I think the Judicial Tenure Commission may well take him out. I also want to point out 2 other things. One, the October surprise we didn't talk about. The economy is getting so much better.
Oh my God! Right.
That is likely to.
The job numbers were to come out today, I thought.
Right.
It was over
Well,
200. It was over 200,000 new jobs.
Wow.
Yeah, but those are all going to immigrants. So
yes,
I mean,
and it's
what's
fake
the point?
news.
Yeah.
It's like they did it.
I also want to support Nancy because she's always in charge, as I told Alan this week. That there's a great article about this male-female split and why these men are going in the New York Times. Why are Gen Z women so much more liberal than Gen Z men? I highly recommend you read the article if you get a chance.
I will. I will read that.
It speaks to. I think it speaks to what's going on in terms of the vote split.
Interesting.
But Gen Z men are likely to be playing video games rather than voting. That's my big hope. And the women are going to be out voting.
Oh, women, we're going to vote. Oh, absolutely.
But Gen Z women.
Yeah.
All right. Nancy.
Okay. As long as I have been here, and in my conversations with my colleagues, I've said, I'm not so sure about this Charlie LaDuff guy. And I am told over and over by veteran journalists, he's a great reporter. He's a little hard to take, but he's a great reporter. Okay. So today or the other day, I'm scrolling Twitter during a break. I don't know what I was doing. And I see that he had RFK Jr. on his show this week, his podcast, and in person, which tells you something about the state of RFK Jr.'s life these days, that he finds time to sit on the second floor of the American Coney Island with Charlie for an hour-long interview. But at the same time, it's also instructive because Charlie allowed him to spew bullshit, lie after lie. And I could only stand to listen to the Make America Healthy Again segment. He put up some very helpful, anchors so that I could just click there and not have to sit through the rest of it. And it was just, we're going to do away with fluoridation, and we're going to do away with this, and we're going to do away, and all I could think was, this guy is going, if Trump is reelected and he elevates RFK Jr. to some sort of position of authority in the public health sphere, it is going to be to use the ex-president's favorite word, disaster. It's going to be an absolute fucking disaster. It's bad enough that there are people who don't remember when kids used to die of, pertussis and measles and, have scars from chicken pox. It's going to be terrible. And the idea that, Mr. Tough Reporter, Charlie LaDuff, who's, he won't let Dana Nessel get away with that stuff, will just sit there and let RFK Jr. run his mouth. Oh, speaking of which, and we're talking public health with Charlie LaDuff, the guy who smokes Marlboro Reds like they're going out of style and likes to have a few. It's like, if you want to improve your health in this country, give up smoking, drinking, wear your seatbelt, get rid of the guns in your house, and you're on your way to a long and healthy life. But nobody.
Well, Nancy, if you look at his demographics, he's speaking to his demographic that listens to him all the time.
I know. I realize that. I mean, that's the thing. He's basically just playing. I mean, he's a clown now. I mean, it's like, this is just an entertainment show at this point.
And Nancy, you know who really loved that interview, Nancy?
Who?
The Lafayette Coney Island, because it wasn't there.
It's still my favorite Coney, but that rat thing is
like there weren't rats.
Time to get it out your mind.
Come on.
You mean the mascot?
I still love the Lafayette. I've gone back, but
there were always rats at both Coney
but
Island.
I knew that because I went to the bathroom. It was like, oh my god! But it wasn't official.
Well, Joel, you should have seen
paranoia neurosis.
Official rat,
but Joel,
there.
Joel, didn't you see the sign said occupied when you went there? I mean,
hey, give me a minute.
So my schmuck of the week is CBS Morning's Tony Dokupal. He had Ta-Nehisi Coates, the famed writer, on his show, who's promoting his latest book called The Message, which is a series of essays. But one of the highlights in there was when Ta-Nehisi Coates had visited Gaza and the West Bank, and in his reflections was talking about the suffering that the Palestinian people endure under occupation. Dokupal decided to put him through a Torquemada-like inquisition, asking him, do you believe Israel has a right to exist? This book looks like it could be found in the backpack of an extremist. And are you offended by the idea of a Jewish state?
Wow.
Coates was grace under all of this barrage of fire. And he certainly got fairer treatment by Jon Stewart and on other platforms. But it was a disgusting demonstration, which I don't even think can be called journalism. But unfortunately, it's not uncommon. I mean, we saw this with Jake Tapper and Dana Bash on CNN. That any invocation or recognition of Palestinian condition or suffering is met with an indictment. Jake Tapper actually perpetuated, as did Dana Bash, the mischaracterization of Rashida Tlaib when it came to her critique of Dana Nessel bringing charges against U of M protesters, pro-Palestinian protesters. And Dana Bash, a few months ago, when a 6-year-old Palestinian girl was killed, referred to her as a woman, as if somehow or the other that is more acceptable as a civilian casualty. So, right. Tony Dokupal, for masquerading as a journalist, you are my schmuck of the week. Well, here we are again at the conclusion of another show, and thank you.
We gave you a whole hour, even with my screw up. So there.
we did, because we do not deprive anyone. And great job, Nancy, at the helm. Great job, everybody.
We may be depraved, but we do not deprive.
Wow.
We're depraved on account of we're deprived.
I am running to get that bumper sticker made right now.
I too.
Yes. Thank you, Ed Sarpolis. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Barb Engels. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Bill Cycli. And for you, Nancy, thank you. And with the last word, without Alan.
Drive home safely.
There you go. Nailed it. Thank you, everybody. Again. Happy high holidays. Have a great weekend. Go Lions, go Tigers.
Yeah. Bye-bye.